Do you still shoot on film, or or is it all digital for you now?
Well, we're in a transition right now, and we alternate. I mean, it depends from job to job. Last year, I shot 2 feature films in high definition on the Sony F900, which is one of the state-of-the-art cameras. And this year, I shot Super 16, which is coming back into its own.
Really?
Super 16 was sort of a fringe alternative filmmaking stock in the 80s and 90s. It's been around for a while, basically. It's 16 millimeter stock with the right-hand perforations removed. And so you don't have the perforations and you don't have the soundtrack area there. So the intention being that ultimately you're going to deliver this in a different medium. Either it's going to blow up to 35 or it's going to transfer to television or digital. But the aspect ratio of it, which is the height to width ratio, matches almost identically high definition television signal. So you get an optimal image area transferring over to high definition. And because the quality of the film stocks are so good, you don't necessarily perceive grain in these transfers as long as you shoot it correctly. So it's something that a lot of people are opting for. There are a lot of quality issues to consider, a lot of aesthetic issues to consider when choosing between film and HD. And even if it's Pro HD or it's HDV, if it's 35 or it's 16, one of the most predominant things that becomes affected is the depth of field, which for people who are used to using cameras, obviously if you focus on me, I'm in focus. And depending on what your depth of field is, that's, is my knee in focus? Is that curtain in focus? And that's scalable. It's scalable depending on the distance. It's scalable depending on the stop. But optically, from a physics point of view, it's dependent upon relationships between the lens and the size of the target, the size of the area that's being imaged. Be that a CCD in a digital camera or be that a film frame in a 35 or 16 millimeter camera. And digital cameras are becoming so much more able to emulate characteristics of film cameras. The fact that you can shoot progressively now, that you can shoot 24 frames, you can shoot 24p on a camera like a Sony F900, which gives you full HD TV resolution, that being 1080 vertical by 1920 horizontal. That really gives you an awful lot of information. And you have a 48th of a second shutter that you can put on, which emulates the shutter characteristic of a film camera. Recently, a friend loaned me a V1U, a Sony V1U, which is a new Sony camcorder that's about $5,000. And it shoots a version of 1080p, 24p. And there's HDV compression involved. So if you have a lot of motion, it's going to block up. You're going to see that kind of blocking because of the way that it compresses. But if you don't have a lot of motion in your frame and you know how to shoot with it, you can just get amazing pictures, just truly staggering pictures out of this tiny little $6,000 camera. And I'll tell you, this feature that I shot last year, the last one that I shot on the F900, I've gone back and I've done some pickups. I've done some beauty shots, some nature shots, just some shots of trees and roads and things that are meant to cut in as inserts and to help make the edit flow. I've shot them on the V1U, and they cut in seamlessly. So there's a lot of things to choose, and again, it becomes a very personal thing. There's a lot of good reasons to use digital cameras. For one thing, if you shoot on film, there are a lot of intervals or stages at which your image is subject to manipulation or interpretation, or it could become damaged. It can have mechanical damage, in the camera. It can have damage at the lab. One of the things about the HD stuff, obviously the tape can become damaged, but you're basically shooting your master, and you're outputting it on a monitor. And as long as you have a waveform monitor, which would be analogous, to a VU meter or a spectrum analyzer, you're looking exactly at all of the information digitally. It's not subjective. A monitor, anybody who has a television knows, grandpa's television can be green, or somebody's TV, the color tube can be going out, or, there's all kinds of things that you can do subjectively to screw that up. But as long as it's properly calibrated, the waveform monitor is going to give you the actual signal going in so that your exposure will be precise. And it's just such a quick tool to be able to lock stuff down. And, you know, especially on lower budget stuff, it's a really, really handy thing to have, and it's a handy thing to be able to do. Having said that, you know, I'm about to start on another feature that's all 35 millimeter. So it's all, it's still a period of transition, and I think that transition is going to last, you know, another 10 or 15 years before, you know, Kodak, you know, phases out their film stock.